Now, here is a very interesting and thought-provoking question. What if Japanese media also became woke? Then what would happen? A discussion. With the current state of the world in Japan, I don't think it's hard to say that Japan is also having a bad time aside from this. What will actually happen to anime and manga specifically? The obvious thing is that we all know fan service will be censored. Force diversity and shitty stories, but what about the characters, visuals, and designs itself? Main selling point of anime right now is that it has really beautiful characters and it's visually appealing. Will that also change? Will characters also become ugly? Because in games you have other things to do and most of the people don't give attention to characters, this is false by the way, that much, but eye-pleasing mediums such as anime, manga need to have aesthetics to captivate audience. What are your takes on it? Okay, so if we look at a similar ideology, communism. When applied to different nations, you can notice that there's many things that are the same, but also a lot of differences. So the communism in China is very different than the communism in Soviet Union, which is very different than the communism in East Germany, so on and so forth. It's the same with wokeness, really. The wokeness in the United States is different than the one in the UK, is different than the one in Germany. They have like many things that are similar, but they have many differences. And it kind of makes sense, right? Because, for example, in the United States, you have a lot of black people, but you don't have them in Japan. So it would be different to justify that you need representation in anime to the same level that you have in the United States. And even then, there is also another aspect of it is the idea of diversity itself. I remember there was a Norwegian filmmaker. He made a movie from his country in the medieval time, and he was questioned, it's like, how do you expect to win an award because your movie doesn't have diversity, it's only white people. But then they talk about how the movie Parasite, which is a South Korean film, and it had only South Korean actors, oh, well, that has a lot of diversity, right? So Japanese people also have diversity. But you'll notice that Japanese people do wokeness differently. I would say that the new Capcom is incredibly woke, with Street Fighter 6 especially. And yet you notice that while they have characters that are very disturbing, like Marisa, and they have like body type A and body type B nonsense, they also have characters like Kami, and they have characters like Chun-Li and Juri, which look really great. So wokeness in Japan doesn't necessarily mean that it will be identical to what we saw with the comic books in the United States. And I'm pretty sure like their politics and their talking points would be different. But let's assume that it would actually happen, right? So like all of the characters in Japan would be made ugly. Well, what would happen then? People would just stop reading manga, I guess. I mean, one of the main reasons why people are attracted to manga and anime is because there's nothing else to watch, right? Like, people are being pushed away from the comic book industry, people are being pushed away from American TV shows because they're garbage. So what they have in exchange is comic books. Now, if those were to be removed, then I'm pretty sure like South Korea puts on, I don't know how they're called, mangaka or something, right? They have those. If those were to be taken off, like, people would find something else. There's VTubers, there's content creators, there's other entertainment that people would subscribe to. Obviously, like, Japan would lose a lot of its cultural influence, just like the United States has lost its cultural influence. But that's not necessarily something to be shocked. I mean, if you look at human history, you'd notice that for a long while, the French dominated culture. Like, when we had theater plays in Romania, they were played in French, even though most people here didn't speak French. And there were no translators, there was nothing. Like, you would go to a theater and you'd listen to the play in French. And the French are still upset. I mean, some of the boomers in France are still living that the English then took over the culture. Not necessarily the English, but the Americans, right? And they spread the English language across the world through the internet. But I do think like the American culture is definitely in decline. And most of the world doesn't look at the United States the same way they used to. And now it's definitely places like Japan, and there's like some European independent films that are starting to make headways. South Korea is pushing for great movies. So if Japan was to sabotage its own comic book industry, which is manga, yeah, people will go to other places and they will find alternatives. What's also interesting to point out is that would characters become ugly? The Japanese way of drawing anime, I have covered in a previous video, is to cut costs, is to make it cheaper. So if you were to like try to revolutionize the art style, it would be very difficult because most artists would have to adapt to the new art style. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult. It would be like a bizarre decision from the anime studios. But what's more important is the fan service, right? So from what I've seen, at least right now, it's not necessarily that they're against fan service. Like most of the leftists are just against girls that are under the age of 18. And I'm not talking about like sexual environments. I'm talking like My Hero Academia. I'm talking Demon Slayer. So like any type of high school settings, they claim that those are the girls that they want to cover the booba, right? So unironically, like leftists on Twitter right now, when they look at My Hero Academia, if they see a cleavage, they freak the fuck out. It's just like a very bizarre thing. Because again, like My Hero Academia is not a sexual TV show. It's like made for teenagers. Those are the main audience. But they freak out to an extent that shocks me, right? And they usually will say, you're hypersexualizing, like it's almost like they're doing pole dancing or something. You're hypersexualizing these characters, and if the argument is like, well, yeah, but like 16 is legal almost everywhere on Earth, it's like, yeah, but legal doesn't mean moral. So now you have leftists that like they argue that American morality is superior than all the other nations on the planet. And all the other nations have to bow down to the American morality, even though there are states in the US where 16 is legal. And I don't even know why we're talking about this, because not only are they fictional characters, but again, My Hero Academia and Demon Slayer have absolutely no sex scenes in it. So I do think like that would be like the push, right? It wouldn't be like an all-out censorship, because it's really difficult to argue for like actual censorship in 2023 when you have OnlyFans and Twitch hot tub streamers and whatnot. But they would literally go and like think of the children. And I feel like that would be just the foot in the door. But by the time that they finish with this, you know, by the time the censorship starts, it usually takes like 4 or 5 years. And by then, like, hopefully American comic books will de-wokify and you might actually go back to American entertainment. Still, I do think it's very unlikely for Japan to actually become woke. At least not in the next 5 years. It's possible in the future down the line, but definitely not right now. So let me know what you guys think, and as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.